Before we dive into season 1, we're bringing you with a special prelude, season 0, Flirting with Design Technologies. It's a playful yet profound look at how technology is reshaping creativity, design, and innovation. Through a mix of fresh recordings, TEDx talks, and global design dialogues that we've had over the past years, we're revisiting key movements that define the evolution of digital design. From AI and parametric workflows to the future of education and fabrication, this season sets the stage for what's to come. Let's dive into Flirting with Design Technologies. Sound rolling, camera rolling, and action. AI tools within architecture started to become very popular in the last 2-3 years. AI currently cannot understand the emotion behind a certain design that we're trying to do or a space that we're trying to create. That is exactly where the balance has to come from a designer's perspective, that how much you want to use AI and when to stop. Whether it's early professionals, you have to understand and get your basics right first. Only when you have a basic understanding and skill set of design and understanding, only after that the technology starts to come in, honestly. So the problem is being has to be defined a little more in depth. So the primary difference between a search and a research is where I would put it is as an analogy, that a Google search is more about putting the keywords together. This is more about putting the prompts.
Hello, everyone. This is Gauri Goyal, the anchor and interviewer for today's podcast, Breaking Complexity, Season 0, Episode 3. So, today's theme is Flirting with Design Technology, romanticizing the relationship between architecture and AI, or we should say that AI and architecture are officially dating now. So, this topic is very interesting, and we have a very special guest, a renowned curator in the field of parametric architecture, architect Sushant Verma. So, I'm really excited to have him here and ask him a lot many questions. Okay, so my very first question to you is that what do you actually mean when we say AI and architecture are going on a date? Like how the relation between AI and architecture has evolved over the years.
So I think AI became very, very popular, I would say like 4-5 years back. And then the curve of its popularity sort of grew exponentially over the last few years. And the adoption rate of AI has been to an extremely high right now, where not just architects, but the general public as well has been starting to use AI or forced to use AI rather in different ways. Right from that we have AI functionality on our Instagram to Meta, Facebook, pretty much anything and everything that we're using on day-to-day life, like WhatsApp as well. So I think architects are not far behind in the curve, I would say. And I think AI tools within architecture started to become very popular in the last 2-3 years. Uh, and when I say that, they are on a date, it's pretty much like the starting phase of testing out a relationship. And it's pretty much like that a lot of architects are actually right now testing out AI, different tools of AI, and how we can sort of integrate that into the workflow. Whether it's right or wrong, that's something which is debatable. What are the ethics of AI? That is also sort of debatable right now. But as long as the dating part is concerned, yes, architects are using a lot of AI. And the adoption rate being very high, there are so many tools out there. I can start to name a few, like Mid Journey, for example, which is a good image creation tool that one can use. Chat GPT, of course, can allow you to now also create images as well, but also write a lot of narratives around architecture as well. So architects are very smartly now using AI to sort of make their workflows much more efficient, and also able to create a lot of conceptualization of designs and ideas which they were not able to do otherwise. So which people have started to test out now. And let's see where it goes from here.
It's quite insightful. So, do you think AI is just a tool, a collaborator, or it can even pose a threat to the design practices?
That's a very interesting question, because the whole question about being a threat has always been there. Because the biggest question with the popularity of AI has been that whether AI is going to replace us. And honestly, the answer has also been very clear in the last couple of years that AI will replace us if we don't skill up with AI. So it definitely is sort of a collaborator. It is definitely a very powerful tool which one can use. But my personal take on this is that I do have a problem with a lot of architects and designers trying to use AI without thinking, without understanding the potentials of AI. So there is a lot of blind usage of AI that is happening right now. So a lot of people, majority of people are actually blindly using AI without understanding technology. And that's exactly what happened with computational design also in the past, where people were using tools like Grasshopper and different other softwares for parametric design pretty much blindly without understanding the logic behind their usage. And that same curve is being followed by AI. So the adoption rate of AI has been absolutely high, but at the same time, one has to be very careful about why you're using AI. And as much as it is important to know where to start, it is equally important to know where to stop. And in your design process, you have to know when to sort of disengage with AI as well. So you can't be using AI for everything. For example, you can use AI to create a very interesting and a powerful image, but if you don't know how to make a 3D model out of it and later on realizing that into a project, there is no point to using the AI on the first go. But a lot of people are using to create quick ideations, quick renditions, and one has to understand that where does it fit into my workflow. Whether it helps me to sketch out an idea, whether it helps me to create a render 3D visualization, for example, whether it allows me to create a good project narrative. Whatever it is, one has to know where you want to use it and where it fits into the ecosystem.
Amazing. So, through your experience, you can tell me that how AI is shaping the future of design in the field of architectural ideation and execution.
So honestly, AI has not been sort of integrated into the execution part as of now at this
Okay.
point in time, but definitely in the conceptualization process. So AI is definitely helping in a lot of quick ideation process, because there is generative AI using tools like Midjourney, even Chat GPT, and I don't know, can't remember a lot of AI tools right now, but like all of them pretty much are centered around Midjourney and generative AI as such. And what they help you to do is sort of ideate your ideas through a text prompt. So you're actually defining what you want, and what that is also doing is it's actually making architects much more thoughtful about their design process, because AI is going to give you the output visually only after you define it properly. So your text prompt has to be absolutely crisp. And once you're able to define, for example, you write that, okay, I am looking for a high rise building, 30 floors height, uh, sea facing in the city of Mumbai, for example, and it'll start to generate an idea. So when you set 30 floors, AI is smart enough to understand the height of a particular floor is, let's say, 10 feet or 3.3 meters, for example. It'll automatically calculate the height of the building and give you a rendition, or an image rather, which is of a building of that scale. And then if you don't define 30 floors, for example, and if you say a high rise, AI will not know whether it's 30 floors or 100 floors, what is a high rise, for example. So it is making architects think a little more about what they want and give the right kind of text prompts, which is creating that visual. So once you're able to do that, it sort of creates a lot of ideas. It lets you then choose and develop your ideas forward. How we are using it in our studios, we're sort of trying to use our own projects and integrating generative AI to train it to understand the design language and sort of create our own style. So whatever new we are creating, it's also following on the base of our own work. So that itself is, we feel, is starting to add a layer of intelligence to the kind of ideation. But when it comes to execution, I don't think AI is advanced that much. In fact, the role of AI has to sort of stop after a certain point, which is typically after the ideation process. Uh, I know a lot of people are using AI with services, services, building information modeling as well. So AI is definitely permeating into other fields in the realm of architecture and design and construction, but it's not there yet right now.
Really impressive. Lot of wisdom. So, have you ever personally used any AI tool and floated with them? And if you really did, so what surprised you?
So I think my current favorite has been ChatGPT, and using it to an extremely high, I would say, uh, in a high octane manner, I would say, because what I'm using it for is, I mean, obviously, my whole journey with AI started with using Mid Journey, because we were integrating that into a smart labs program where we were teaching Mid Journey to a lot of students. And then slowly, when ChatGPT started to become much more popular, I started to use ChatGPT. It integrated an image generation possibility as well, and it has a lot of plugins that we can sort of add. So my current favorite is actually ChatGPT, and using it to its potential in a lot of ways. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I'm using it for creating ideation. I'm using it for a problem solving as well. I'm using it to train to learn my voice and my personality, and start to create some ideas out of it. It is still in a testing phase, I would say, but there are times where I've actually went on a coffee date with AI. I actually went to a cafe, had a coffee, and then opened Mid Journey on Chat GPT on a couple of screens, two, three devices that I had, and I was trying to ideate something and create something out of it. And this is something when I was also working on one of my books. So I was doing a lot of ideation of my ideas and creating that into a narrative, which could only happen by using, Chat GPT in an extremely high octane manner, I would say. So that's my favorite tool right now.
That's really so impressive. So, since you mentioned about text prompts, like how smart we have to be to give a prompt to AI.
So I think when we are sort of conversing with AI, it has to be extremely important what we are talking to AI. So as an architect, as a designer, when we're trying to ideate something and create an idea, you have to be very specific about your prompts. But at the same time, there has to be a balance between it can't be too long and it can't be too short, and it has to get the right specifics and all the right ingredients in place. Think of it like creating a recipe. When you're creating a recipe, you have to have like 6 or 7 ingredients, for example. You have to add them in the right mix. For example, if you have to add 2 teaspoons of sugar and 1 teaspoon of salt, you have to have the proportions right. So I have to define that 2x sugar and x salt, right? That's how you'll define the problem, and then heat it for some time is a very subjective thing. So you have to be very objective that heat it for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. So how you create that recipe, being very specific, creating all the ingredients and being very objective, you have to be as specific to the text prompts, exactly in the same manner, because you have to be very objectively be able to define that. Okay, for example, if I'm creating a stadium design, for example, and you have to mention that, is it a cricket stadium or a tennis stadium? Is it a hockey stadium or an ice hockey stadium? Because all of these dimensions will differ. For example, the context will differ. So the moment you define, okay, I want to design a cricket stadium, which is of a 30,000 capacity, how will AI think? AI will start to look into its database for all the stadiums that it has. It will sort of cross verify and check that how many stadiums are around 30,000 capacity, get an image downsized to a few images, and start to create an ideation out of that. Then, if you define it's a day shot or an evening shot or a night shot, and you have players in a white dress or their colored jersey, depending on the mood that you want to set, you can actually start to define your prompts exactly like that. So that's how specific and smart you have to be in the text prompting. Because, so I mean, the two things I would say is you have to be very, very objective, and there's no room for subjectivity when you're talking to AI. You have to be very objective. And the second thing is you have to be get the ingredients right. And so that is the balance that one has to create when you're using text prompts with AI.
That's totally thoughtful of you. So, out of curiosity, a question just arose out of my subconscious mind. Like, people are really afraid of sharing their private data to AI. So, what do you think, like, what they can ask AI so that we can make the maximum output of AI?
So I don't think architects should be very concerned about their privacy or data, honestly,
Yeah.
because I don't think we have anything to hide as such. Of course, the how AI is being used by a lot of people right now, and how we are sort of interacting with tools like ChatGPT. Um, I know people are using it for therapy as well, for example. Then obviously you're using a lot of private data and information, or you're asking like different advice or life advice or something. So honestly, one has to understand that how much of data are we wanting to give. But I personally feel that how much of data you're wanting to give to the digital world was never in our control anyway. That's something which has always been there. Whether you're googling up something, whether you're searching on anything, you are accepting cookies from different websites. Eventually, you are giving your data as well anyway. So I personally don't feel that there is anything much to hide as such. But yes, there are ethical concerns around AI. There are concerns around, like how much of information you can share. It is not private for sure, right? But at the same time, this will go into a different trajectory of conversation. So bringing it back into architecture and design, I don't think architects have anything to worry about when it comes to what kind of information, what kind of prompts you're trying to give. Uh, of course, I mean, if somebody is working on an absolutely confidential project, and if you're using AI to conceptualize, let's say, and giving sensitive information about the project, yes, it is not 100% secure, but then who is there to access it anyway? There is no other user who can fetch that data as such. Of course, the company which is building that AI can fetch that information, but I don't think anybody is going to use it against you or something. So I personally feel that these are not something which is issues which are not very concerning for architects and designers specifically.
Great. That's relieving to know. So, what do you think that can AI truly understand the emotion, the culture, and the context of architectural design?
Uh, I wish it could, but unfortunately, it cannot. And that's exactly where your prompting has to be absolutely crisp and very, very objective. Uh, AI currently cannot understand the emotion behind a certain design that we're trying to do or a space that we're trying to create. That is exactly where the balance has to come from a designer's perspective, that how much you want to use AI and when to stop. Because AI can help you achieve, let's say, for example, you're trying to conceptualize a very dark space, for example. Now, you may define it as a dark space or you may define it as a cozy space, right? There is just a difference of an emotion. But AI will give you the result, might be very similar to both these scenarios and how you want to, contextualize the overall design. But at the end of the day, it is about what you as a designer have the emotions toward that space and how do you objectively translate that emotion to an AI engine which is able to create an image for you. So at the end of the day, it is not about AI understanding the emotions. It cannot. It definitely cannot. It is basically you have to understand how AI functions and AI works and how it uses different kind of images to kind of merge them and put them together to create an idea or design or an image. That image itself is not space. That is just an image. That is not a three-dimensional space. There are tools which allow you to understand the depth in a certain image and be able to create sort of a 3D model using AI as well. But that itself will obviously lack that sense of touch and the emotion that you're trying to build in. So you have to understand that AI is not meant to translate that aspect. But of course, if one is to use AI very smartly, you can then use another form of AI, which is a tool like ChatGPT, for example, and ask it to decode the emotions of the image. So, for example, if I'm creating a text prompt to create an image, then I'm using ChatGPT to decode that image into a text and the emotions and try to figure out what are the key emotions which are relating to what I want to design it as, and then use that to create a design. So, what you're ending up doing is using AI and different engines of AI as smart tools to be able to create something layer by layer, and that becomes your design process. At the end of the day, I'll tell you that it is all about a design process. Every designer follows a certain design process for a different kind of a project, and AI is sort of filling the gaps in between that process itself. It is not something which is designing for you, but it is definitely allowing you to fill certain gaps into the workflow. So, yeah, AI does not understand emotions yet.
Yes,
Yeah.
truly agree to it. Can you give some real world examples of AI led design or AI assisted design that really stand out to you?
So, I don't think we have actually used AI to sort of into a project where it has really gone forward into an ideation as such. But what we've been trying to build right now is we're actually feeding AI with a lot of our facade projects specifically, and we are training our own AI engine which we have created. It's called labrat.ai, which is sort of our internal AI engine that we are working on. And we're sort of feeding it with a lot of information and data about hundreds of facade projects that we've done so far. And with an aim to sort of bring out an output of a style that if we have a requirement of a facade design, we're able to use those imageries to create a new style altogether or create a new design altogether. It is still in the testing stage right now, I would say, and that's something which we'll know with the times to come. But I know that a lot of people are using AI at the concept stage. A lot of firms are using AI to create an idea or a design which later on gets developed and rationalized and moves on forward into a final project. uh, yeah, as of now, as a studio, we are still very young with using AI right now, I would say, but we're really exploring in different trajectories and directions altogether.
So, according to you, how AI is shaping design education and the way we teach creativity to the budding architects?
So I think we started to use, integrate AI into our curriculum at Smart Labs about 3 years back during Smart Labs 7.0. Currently, it's in 11.0 phase. And so the seventh batch of Smart Labs started to use AI, was started to introduce with AI in a very generic sense of using Mid Journey and different generative AI tools and create a lot of concepts using AI. And then slowly we started to integrate AI a little deeper into with Smart Labs 8 and 9, where we also started to use AI assistants to create notes out of different sessions that were happening and taught, which is sort of using different sessions, creating notes out of it, creating summaries out of it, sending it to students, and creating new curriculum updates for us. So I think we are sort of in a testing and experimental stage right now, I would say. But I think AI has a lot of potential to be taught in the right ways to budding professionals, I would say. And very recently in Smart Labs 10, we started to use AI to conceptualize a high rise project in Mumbai. Previously, we were using AI to create a temple project or a sacred space in Delhi. And the next project that people are working on or going to be working on now is creating a mixed use development in Dubai, and with using AI and how we can integrate computational design with AI, which is something which is personally very close to me because I've been using computational design for the last uh, 15 years now, I would say. So it's been a long journey of using computational design. And if we are able to test it out and integrate that with AI, that is something which is going to be a game changer for us. So I think what we are really excited about next is how we integrate parametric and computational design with AI, and that's pretty much what we're teaching in Smart Labs 11.0.
So, coming back to the flashback of the interview you had with Ondrej Tichy, Heatherwick Design Studio in London during the year 2020, I would like to know a little about that also because you talked about visual design and visual communication back then. So, what are your cues about that?
Yeah, so that was a very interesting interview session that I had with him. I think it was a very good opportunity for me to be at Heatherwick Design Studio in London and have that kind of an interaction with the head of communications over there. And he really spoke about some exciting visuals about the projects that Heatherwick Studio has been doing, showed me around a lot of prototypes and the models. So yeah, let's look back into that video and see what we spoke about.
So, Ondrej, thank you very much for being a part of this design dialogue. So, as I mentioned, we're working on this book on filling the void, bridging the gap between architecture and technology, specific to the Indian leaders. And here it's a pleasure being at Heatherwick Studio and trying to learn from you how you are using technology and getting your global perspective on design technologies. So, firstly, I would like to ask you, how do you think technology has helped the studio in general to work on different scales of projects or different typologies of projects? If you can, share some light on that.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm here to chip in my fields. Yeah, because we started with because Thomas Heatherwick, he was trained as a designer, and he started building on a small scale.
Right.
He slowly built up to kind of like scale where we are working now, and we love to change the scale and working on multiple scales at the moment.
Yeah.
And technology is definitely something that can help us and enhance our design process.
Right.
Especially for like visualizing different kind of a scale and sizes.
Right.
For example, where we start using kind of gaming engines, so maybe like an Unreal Engine and virtual reality.
Right.
It's something that brings additional level of experiencing sizes and scales. Because we love to work with the physical models.
Right.
That's kind of our how we grew up working with. But of course there's a limit to that where you can kind of like do that. So you have to work like mockups, scale 1-to-1.
Right.
And also the kind of like smaller, and also so in order to experience, be able to actually compare different sizes. For example, the technology like Unreal Engine or virtual reality helps us to decide and make these decisions faster, or help us to kind of cut down the number of options, before we build like physical mockups. So it could be also sustainable in a way, because before we would produce, let's say, 10 mockups 1-to-1, and kind of like judge them physically. Whereas now we can kind of we have this kind of templates to actually do this kind of pre-selection in VR. Digitally. So we kind of like we first review them digitally before we proceed to kind of like making the physical model. So let's say we could be quite creative with we should like do 10 kind of physical mockups for mouse trade. So now we can kind of like do like can we model them in VR, we decide it and do all 3 selections at once, and then we decide on physical one. So that's kind of one of the
And computational design has obviously been one of the emerging technologies in architecture and design, even in industrial design scale as well, because you are able to compute a lot of data and information and use that in your design in different ways. So how do you think computational design is really helping the practice in different projects? Maybe you can throw an example of a few projects.
Yeah, I mean, again, like it's also the number of iterations you can generate from the speed of the process of modeling. Also produces faster, cleaner models. Rather than previously doing it manually, and it's also geometrically kind of sometimes nicer. There are lots of examples now. Pretty much every project is sort of like this computational kind of element to that, because of the ease of production. Also, the interoperability between Rhino and Revit. And also Unreal Engine. Is something that actually helps us speed up the process.
And do you think that using computational design or these kind of tools or technological tools that we have, does it have a direct impact on how you're envisioning a project, or is it more the project first and then technology layer coming up later?
It's just something we're kind of always try to strike a balance between the physical modeling, prototyping. Also, we have the idea, and there's the technology that kind of helps us. So I think it's always like to find the balance. For example, on several projects now, we are starting kind of a computer free week. So we just go to the workshop and physically do models. So for example, that's kind of help us to actually think physically first. So it's kind of like the first kind of state models. And then later these scripts usually were produced in Rhino, and we try to go kind of add the computational design to it.
Because I think it's a lot about the spatial effect and the experience that's there in the all projects. And that's what we also notice when we look at Heatherwick's work as well. Like any project, the complexity is there, but yet there is some kind of simplicity as well.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that it's also computational design sometimes helps us make it simpler in
Right.
to kind of like define it and like be more complex.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you over design or like add too much
Right.
stuff to it, then it's could be a bit heavy and
Yeah.
not refined.
Right.
Sometimes we go to the process. Technology helps us to clean up.
Right.
And make it kind of like
Right.
it's
Great. Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty much well, and that really should help us, in converting these thoughts and we had in this discussion into a chapter on global perspectives, which you're working on in the books. So, without taking much more of your time, so thank you very much for being a part of this dialogue, and all the very best for the ongoing and the future projects. That's really good.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, I really wanted to know that how AI engines are truly set apart from the normal Google search engines.
So when you're searching something on Google, you're basically typing in a lot of keywords, and Google sort of stitches those keywords together and tries to find in the large database that it has of all the information on the web, that where exactly do these keywords sort of appear much more popularly, I would say. And then accordingly it'll start to give you the results. When you do an AI search, imagine it to be adding with a layer of intelligence. So you're not just searching, you're sort of researching, because what it does is it basically allows you to think with it, and you, because of that, you have to be a little more specific about it. You have to be objectively defining what you're looking for as well. You cannot ask that, for example, if I'm looking at skyscrapers, I'm talking a lot about skyscrapers today, but yeah, if you just write skyscrapers and architecture and just do a Google search, you'll get all sorts of images. But if you type the same thing on AI or any AI tool, it is not going to understand that problem. It is possibly going to bounce back a question to you that, what do you want me to do with this information? Then you'll have to fine tune and define it, that I want to design a skyscraper, or I want case studies of a skyscraper. So the problem is being has to be defined a little more in depth. So the primary difference between a search and a research is where I would put it is, as an analogy, that a Google search is more about putting the keywords together. This is more about putting the prompts. AI obviously is going to take more time because it looks into its database, tries to identify the issue, and it has a layer of intelligence. It has this thought process because it has been trained with machine learning algorithms, which start to become smarter over a period of time. So anytime you're using an AI search, you get much more accurate results. Um, in fact, if you for example, if you want to look up for an architect or some personality, if you just type a Google search, it will give you a lot of information about that person. If you do an AI search, it might give you a little more in-depth information about that person, which is available, possibly hidden somewhere in the database as well. So that's pretty much where these two sort of differ.
Thanks for giving such a deep insight into this topic. Before we wrap up this podcast, so I would really ask you a question. Like, how do you think AI is shaping the future of young architects, like who are coming into this field? So, what piece of advice you would like to give it to them?
Oh, well, I mean, I would say stay away from AI, So honestly, initially you should stay away from AI. You should stay away from technology of any kind, whether it's early professionals. You have to understand and get your basics right first. Only when you have a basic understanding and skill set of design and understanding, only after that the technology starts to come in, honestly. And I would say you have to embrace technology. You have to use AI to its best potential, but at the same time, you have to know when to start and when to stop, which is what I mentioned earlier as well. So, when to start, the larger question is, once you have basic skill sets in place, once you have basic design understanding, only then start to delve into AI. Do not rush into it. If you're like, let's say you're an architecture student, first year, second year, third year, stay away from AI. Third year onwards, start testing it out, understand what the technology is about. Fourth year, fifth year onwards, take a deep dive into it, and sequentially sort of increase the use of AI or technology, and that will give you the answers that whether you want to use it in your workflow or not. But if you do the mistake of starting with AI a little too early, it can lead to a lot of problems. And that is something specifically which we're trying to teach our students at Smart Labs also, that we do not introduce AI into the curriculum till we get their foundation of computational design sorted. Only once that is sorted, then we introduce AI, and then we talk about the merging of AI and computation. But if we do it in the other chronology, or a different order rather, if you teach them AI first, they will never be able to develop the skill set of computation. They will never be able to understand that logic, because you've already used a technology which sort of gives you the shortcut rather. So I think you have to understand again when to start, when to stop, and don't start too early is all I would say.
Thank you so much for this insightful conversation in today's podcast. And I'm truly inspired to hear your take on this conversation between architecture and AI. Looking forward to having more conversations with you as part of season 0, Flirting with Design Technology.
That's it for the episode of Flirting with Design Technologies. Season 0 has been about pushing creative limits, questioning technology's role in design, and embracing the complexity behind innovation. But we're just getting started. Season 1, Don't Play With My Curves, is coming soon, where we take complexity to a whole new level. Stay tuned and follow Breaking Complexity podcast and subscribe us on all the platforms. We'll see you in the next episode.